3. Now here he was, chasing his boat down the left side of Witcham Street. He was running fast, but the water was running faster, and his boat was pulling ahead. He heard a deepening roar and saw that 50 yards farther down the hill the water in the gutter was cascading into a storm drain that was still open. It was a long, dark semicircle cut into the curbing, and as George watched, a stripped branch, its bark as dark and glistening as sealskin, shot into the storm drain's maw. It hung there for a moment and then slipped down inside. That was where his boat was headed. "Oh, shit and Shinola!" he yelled at his mate. He put on speed, and for a moment he thought he would catch the boat. Then one of his feet slipped and he went sprawling, skinning one knee and crying out in pain. From his new pavement-level perspective he watched his boat swing round twice, momentarily caught in another whirlpool, and then disappear. "Shit and Shinola!" he yelled again, and slammed his fist down on the pavement. That hurt too, and he began to cry a little. What a stupid way to lose the boat. He got up and walked over to the storm drain. He dropped to his knees and peered in. The water made a dank, hollow sound as it fell into the darkness. It was a spooky sound. It reminded him of... "Huh!" The sound was jerked out of him, as if on a string, and he recoiled. There were yellow eyes in there. The sort of eyes he'd always imagined but never actually seen down in the basement. "It's an animal," he thought incoherently. "That's all it is. Some animal, maybe a house cat that got stuck in there." Still, he was ready to run, would run in a second or two when his mental switchboard had dealt with the shock of those 2 shiny yellow eyes had given him. He felt the rough surface of the macadam under his fingers and the thin sheet of cold water flowing round him. He saw himself getting up and backing away, and that's when a voice, perfectly reasonable and rather pleasant voice, spoke to him from inside the storm drain. "Hi, Georgie," it said. George blinked and looked again. He could barely credit what he saw. It was like something from a made-up story, or a movie where you know the animals will talk and dance. If he'd been 10 years older, he would not have believed what he was seeing. But he was not 16. He was 6. There was a clown in the storm drain. The light in there was far from good, but it was good enough so that George Denborough was sure of what he was seeing. It was a clown, like in the circus on TV. In fact, it looked like a cross between Bozo and Clarabelle, who talked by honking his, or was it her? George was never really sure of the gender, horn on Howdy Doody Saturday mornings. Buffalo Bob was just about the only one who could understand Clarabelle, and that always cracked George up. The face of the clown in the storm drain was white, and there were funny tufts of red hair on either side of his bald head, and there was a big clown smile painted over his mouth. If George had been inhabiting a year later, he would have surely thought of Ronald McDonald before Bozo or Clarabelle. The clown held a bunch of balloons, all colors, with gorgeous ripe fruit in one hand. In the other, he held Georgie's newspaper boat. "Want your boat, Georgie?" The clown smiled. George smiled back. He couldn't help it. It was the kind of smile you just had to answer. "I sure do," he said. The clown laughed. "I sure do. That's good. That's very good. And how about a balloon?" "Well, sure." He reached forward and then drew his hand reluctantly back. "I'm not supposed to take stuff from strangers. My dad said so." "Very wise of your dad," the clown in the storm drain said, smiling. How, George wondered, could I have thought his eyes were yellow? They were bright, dancing blue, the color of his mum's eyes, and Bill's. "Very wise indeed. Therefore, I will introduce myself. I, Georgie, am Mr. Bob Gray, also known as Pennywise the Dancing Clown. Pennywise, meet George Denborough. George, meet Pennywise. And now we know each other. I'm not a stranger to you, and you're not a stranger to me. Correct?" George giggled. "I guess so." He reached forward again and drew his hand back again. "How did you get down there?" "Storm just blew me away," Pennywise the Dancing Clown said. "It blew the whole circus away." "Can you smell the circus, Georgie?" George leaned forward. Suddenly he could smell peanuts. hot roasted peanuts, and vinegar, the white kind you put on your french fries through the hole in the cap. He could smell cotton candy and frying doughboys and the faint, thunderous odor of wild animal shit. He could smell the cheery aroma of Midway sawdust, and yet under it all was the smell of flood and decomposing leaves and dark storm train shadows. The smell was wet and rotten. The cellar smell. But the other smells were stronger. "You bet I can smell it," he said. "Want your boat, Georgie?" Pennywise asked. "I only repeat myself, because you really do not seem that eager." He held it up, smiling. He was wearing a baggy silk suit with great big orange buttons. A bright tie, electric blue, flopped down his front, and on his hands were big white gloves, like the kind Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck always wore. "Yes, sure," George said, looking into the storm drain. "And a balloon? I've got red and green, yellow, blue. Do they float?" "Float?" The clown's grin widened. "Oh, yes, indeed they do. They float. And there's cotton candy." George reached. The clown seized his arm, and George saw the clown's face change. What he saw then was terrible enough to make his worst imaginings of the thing in the cellar look like sweet dreams. What he saw destroyed his sanity in one clawing stroke. "They float," the thing in the drain crooned in a clotted, chuckling voice. It held George's arm in its thick and wormy grip. It pushed George toward that terrible darkness where the water rushed and roared and bellowed as it bore its cargo of storm debris toward the sea. George craned his neck away from that final blackness and began to scream into the rain, to scream mindlessly into the white autumn sky which curved above Derry on that day in the fall of 1957. His screams were shrill and piercing, and all up and down Witcham Street people came to their windows or bolted out onto their porches. "They float," he growled. "They float, Georgie, and when you're down here with me, you'll float too." George's shoulders sucked against the cement of the curb, and Dave Gardner, who stayed home from his job at the shoe boat that day because of the flood, saw only a small boy in a yellow rain slicker, a small boy who was screaming and writhing in the gutter with muddy water surfing over his face and making the scream sound bubbly. "Everything down here floats," that chuckling, rotted voice whispered. Suddenly there was a ripping noise and a flaring sheet of agony, and George Denborough knew no more. Dave Gardner was the first to get there, and although he arrived only 45 seconds after the first scream, George Denborough was already dead. Gardner grabbed him by the back of the slicker, pulled him on into the street, and began to scream himself as George's body turned over in his hands. The left side of George's slicker was now bright red. Blood flowed into the storm drain from the tattered hole his left arm had been. A knob of bone, horribly bright, peeked through the torn cloth. The boy's eyes stared up into the white sky, and as Dave staggered away toward the others already running pell-mell down the street, they began to fill up